Greetings, travelers, and welcome to the September 1st Splatfest presented by Draco Breach. The theme this time is Flight versus Invisibility. For this Splatfest, I chose the power of flight over the power of invisibility. Personally, I find it more utilitarian, so it really suits me best. I could go where I want pretty much whenever I want with no additional cost. I can't really think of any negatives to flight unless you wear capes. No capes. On the other hand, invisibility is interesting. It has its benefits. Obviously, you can avoid being seen. However, people will suspect something if they bump into you. As you are still corporeal, you'd have to sneak around Solid Snake style. Also, I can imagine the necessary clothing to go invisible with you would be much more expensive. We've seen from a lot of invisible heroes that they can make their bodies transparent, but clothing remains quite visible unless specially made or treated. One could argue that clothing for a flying hero would also be problematic, but there's one problem in that assessment. The use of flight doesn't require anything special. Seriously, you can get warmer clothes, which are still common, for when you fly high enough. You can get some regular glasses, sunglasses, or goggles to protect from insects, birds, winds, etc. There's nothing abnormal to concern yourself with. Really, I found it a tad easier to choose my preference in this theme when compared to the last two. However, like cake versus ice cream, I do like both options. They are both fascinating, and heroes with either ability still needs to consider circumstances. As an aside, I can only really think of 3 heroes off the top of my head with invisibility versus the plethora of both heroes and villains with flight. Apparently, hero story writers think along the same track I laid out. In short, flight has more versatility and fewer drawbacks than invisibility. With that out of the way, it's time to move on to the main event. I had to think hard about my selection of matches for this one. While I certainly had several Team Flight versus Team Flight matches, the vast majority were against Team Invisibility. There were a few with dropped players, of course. It is rather unavoidable. I did have some communication errors on my side, but surprisingly I wasn't dropped from a single match. Instead, I was dropped from my team right after the results screen. I'm likely to blame my DSL connection on that one, but it is hard to say. Regardless, I had a lot of matches to choose from this time around. I've discussed my criteria at length in the past, so I won't go over that again. Instead, all I'll add here is this. I threw out any match that was an obvious curb stomp. I both won and lost several matches where the losing side had less than 30% coverage by the end. And my recorded footage did not reveal any dropped players. It is odd when it happens, and it really isn't all that interesting to watch. Even still, I had a surprising number of, 47 to 46 victories. 47 to 46% matches that remained. I hope you enjoyed my selection of the matches. They were very difficult to narrow down. I did make it to the highest rank of King Queen by the end, and I managed to scrub my Splatfest T twice by the end. I'll see if I can put those ability shards to good use. As a note, it appears that most abilities give 1 to 2 shards, at least on the Splatfest team. I can't be 100% certain at this point. In the end, Team Flight did take a victory over Team Invisibility. I was pleasantly surprised to see the popularity was very close. In fact, Team Flight had 49% of the vote and Team Invisibility had 51% of the vote. Hopefully this means people are warming up to Pearl and her quirky personality. I really like both her and Marina. What came down to the decision was the team matches, team victories, and individual victories, which I believe were 55 to 45 and 54 to 46. I may have my numbers there mixed up, but that's beside the point. Anyway, you'll notice in the footage that I used the Zapper and the Splatter Shot. I mostly use the latter because I prefer the lower ink consumption versus the greater range. I do find it a tad odd that two weapons with similar rate of fire consume ink at such a vastly different rate. I did try the new Splatbrella during Splatfest, but it really doesn't fit my playstyle. It's a nice weapon, don't get me wrong. I just prefer rapid-fire weapons like the Splattershot and Zapper. The Splatbrella is more like a shotgun with an interesting gimmick. By the end of Splatfest, I did have enough points to purchase the Splution-matic, and I want to give that one a nice little once-over. I'm not sure how much I'll like it with its more aggressive splashdown special versus the ink armor, but I will certainly give it a try as it is very, very fast. It has a very high rapid, very high rapid, that's redundant, very rapid rate of fire, and good damage to go along with it. Anyway, beyond new weapons, I did get to play the new maps before Splatfest, and I really like the one that's on the ship. I think it's the, something Marina, I can't remember. I'm bad with names, I'm sorry. It had a lot of ground where you could ink, and it feels really fun to play on. I don't recall any other maps off the top of my head, but most maps have been pretty solid. The exclusive Splatfest maps have been great as well. Before I forget, there's something you may have noticed. The Splatfest colors seem to darken with continuous play. Team Flight was supposed to be sky blue, and Team Invisibility was supposed to be a pale green. You'll probably notice the colors get a lot darker occasionally and are appropriately light at other times. I just thought it was a little odd, so I pointed it out. Moving on from Splatoon 2, Yacht Club Games announced new amiibo to go along with Shovel Knight Treasure Trove and the release of their final DLC. Plague Knight, Spectre Knight, and King Knight are getting their own amiibo representations. I paused there, I'm sorry. The promotional video was very odd as well. I think I read a comment that it either was the Game Grumps or it imitated their style. I'm not sure myself as I'm not familiar with them. I know who they are, but I've never actually watched any of their videos, I'm sorry to say. I also picked up, wow, that's a bad segue. Anyway, moving on, I also picked up Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and I still occasionally want to call it Grand Kingdom Battle. I really don't know why. Regardless, it has been fun so far. I moved through the first world on my first night with it, and it really is fun trying to figure out the best approach to each battle. I managed to gold rank the first world, so I am quite pleased with that. With how good Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle is, I'm even more excited to see Super Mario Odyssey. It looks like it'll be an amazing open experience. I'm actually fine with the announcement that it won't have a central hub world because it seems to abandon the mission-based structure of Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine. Basically, I see Super Mario Odyssey as taking the best qualities of the two aforementioned games while making improvements to the overall formula. The fact that you aren't kicked out of the world every time you find a collectible makes the whole experience more cohesive, in my opinion. It also helps that the capture mechanic looks amazing, and the new brutal enemies look like they could be great new characters. There's also a fan who studied the map present on the amiibo boxes to discover some additional kingdoms to explore. If he's right, there are at least 10 massive maps to explore. Between Super Mario Odyssey and Xenoblade Chronicles 2, there is a lot of ground to explore. Mario in several kingdoms, and Rex on the bodies of dozens of titans. Speaking of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, the official North American site is up, so you can keep up with everything we know about Rex and Pyra. For the remainder of the year, these are easily my two most anticipated titles. To the point I honestly have a little difficulty remembering other ones. It's made more complicated thanks to some titles I'm anticipating from the recent Nindies reel. I am most interested in Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes, Dragon Marked for Death, Yono and the Celestial Elephants, SteamWorld Dig 2, and Lost Sphere. Several other titles do look interesting, but I have to admit that I'm not really interested in a lot of the titles. Nothing against them, just not my style. Of course, there are some interesting expansions to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Shovel Knight, Final Fantasy 15, and Horizon Zero Dawn in the pipeline as well. So, yeah, there is a lot to look forward to. And the bad thing is, like I said, I really am having a bit of trouble remembering a lot of the titles that are coming out. There's a lot of good titles, and of course there's a lot of titles that I just don't care about. Because I know that Call of Duty is coming out soon, and I'm not a first-person shooter player. I don't normally play shooters. Splatoon just managed to capture my attention in just the right way. But then again, I guess it's just I love quirky, weird characters. I mean, I still love collectathons like, you know, Super Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie. I still love those games, and I wish there were more games like them, which is why I still did look forward to Yooka-Laylee and actually rather enjoyed it. Which is why I'm looking forward to a Hat in Time. I'm hoping that they add Switch to their supported consoles, because I'd rather have it as a game that I can pick up and go with than on a PS4 or an Xbox One. More than likely, I'll just keep my copy as Steam unless they announce a Switch version. What else can I even talk about? And talking about quirky, I have, you know, Disgaea. I like the various games from Nippon Ichi Software, Compile Heart, Idea Factory, all those quirky, weird companies. They make some interesting games, and I like quirky, weird characters. Of course, then there's I'm sure somebody's like, well, have you played Overwatch? And again, that's more of a I like the ideas of a lot of the characters, but I have trouble with the game. I don't know why. I managed to demo it, and I was just like, it's interesting. It really is, but it's not my type of game, unfortunately. I really do need to get back into Final Fantasy 14 as well, now that I'm thinking about it, but time plus money is kind of interesting there. I mean, it's not terribly bad. I think it's $15 a month or something like that, so I don't know. I might try. I don't know at this point. But yeah, that's really all I can think of. I know that there's a half hour of Splatfest footage here, and trust me, they are all very good, very close matches. Because I reviewed them all, and Splatfest is just always fun. It really is. So, I mean, with that, that's all the time that I have to share, unfortunately. So for the time being, this will be Draco Breach reporting out. God bless, and safe travels.